Hello Year 8 and welcome to the third presentation on the topic of Henry VIII and the break from Rome. This presentation will be focusing on Henry VIII's problems and taking each one in turn to give you a better understanding. So let's have a look at them first. You can see them there. He had four main problems. He needed a son, he needed and wanted a divorce from Catherine of Aragon, he wanted more power, and he needed more money. And each of these problems can be linked together, but we're going to look at each of them in turn. So let's start with the first one, and quite possibly the one that he felt was his biggest problem, which was his need for a son. As we've seen in previous presentations, Henry's first wife was Catherine of Aragon, and during their marriage she had a total of 7 pregnancies, but unfortunately and rather sadly only one of those children survived into young adulthood and adulthood, and that was Mary, who was born in 1516, later Mary I of England. Now, whilst a daughter could become queen, and Mary certainly did, Henry really wanted a son to take over when he died and become the next king of England. And the daughter that he'd been given by Catherine of Aragon wasn't what he really wanted. Also, by 1526, Catherine of Aragon was getting quite old and was unlikely, it was felt, to have any more children that would survive. So Henry was stuck, he felt, with Catherine of Aragon and the daughter, Mary, and not the son he really wanted. This can be linked with the next queen that Henry took, which was Anne Boleyn. So as we've established, there were no more children going to be born between Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII. He had fallen in love with the younger Anne Boleyn, and he felt that this was his opportunity to try and have the son that he so desperately wanted. He'd fallen in love with her, he'd started a relationship with her whilst he was still married to Catherine of Aragon, and news was going around that she had actually fallen pregnant. So the second problem that Henry faced was that he needed to make sure that he had divorced Catherine of Aragon and married Anne Boleyn before that child was born, in order for that child to become, he hoped, the next king of England. So Henry needed a divorce, which links in with the third problem of power, because the only person that could offer Henry VIII a divorce and allow him to marry Anne Boleyn in time to have her child become hopefully the next king of England was the Pope. Now the Pope, as we've established in a previous presentation, is in Rome, Henry is over in England, and the Pope is responsible for all Catholics across the whole of Europe. And Henry felt that that gave the Pope too much power, and he felt that he wanted to have some of that power himself and not to have to ask every time he wanted something to the Pope. And the one thing he desperately wanted was that divorce, so that he could marry Anne Boleyn. One extra little piece of information worth noting is that at the time Henry was starting to ask the Pope, over here, for his divorce, Catherine of Aragon's nephew, Charles V, who had the grand title of the Holy Roman Emperor, very, very powerful and important person within Europe, he and his army had actually attacked Rome and taken the Pope pretty much as prisoner, as hostage. So at the time Henry was starting the proceedings and trying to organise his divorce, the man that could grant it was being held captive, was being held as prisoner by Catherine of Aragon, the lady he's trying to divorce, by Catherine of Aragon's nephew. So an added extra little problem there for Henry VIII. Henry's final problem, slightly aside from his need for a son, a need for divorce and a need for more power, but does link in with the Catholic Church, is his need for money. Now, aside from marrying 6 women and lasting for as long as he did on the throne, another thing that Henry is often remembered for is his wars with France. He so wanted to defeat France and take over France, as his namesake Henry V had many years before, and so he waged many, many wars, but unfortunately wars are expensive. Invading France and keeping a strong enough army in France cost an awful lot of money, and whilst they made him look strong, these invasions, it had also left him without much money. And at the same time he saw that the Catholic Church, with all the land that they controlled, and the money they were collecting through charging fines for non-attendance in church and for sins, he felt that there was something that could be tapped into there from the wealth of the Catholic Church. So there we have them, the four main problems that Henry VIII faced during his reign: his need for a son, his need for a divorce, his desire for more power, and his need and desire for more money.